Hey folks, welcome back to the podcast. My guest today is Andy Starnes. Now, Andy first joined EMS and the fire service back in 1991. He has a massive amount of experience working for 12 years as a captain and 25 years total employed. He was assigned to Battalion Chief for 5 years and retired from the CFD back in 2023 after 25 years of service. And he's very active in the area of behavioural health in the fire service, and he is also a published writer internationally in some very well-known books such as Euro Firefighter II. People may be aware of this one. It was originally published by Paul Grimwood. This is Firefighter Tactics and Fire Engineers Handbook, known as a manual for fire commanders, fire design engineers, architects, students, and building regulators. Those of you listening to the podcast for a while will know all of this content is also available in our Patreon, so you can find Euro Firefighter II there. Andy now works as a thermal imaging subject matter expert, assisting departments with purchasing advice, education, and training. He has a big training cadre and they travel across the US and also internationally to around 20 countries. Their curriculum is internationally recognized and copyright protected. They have trained industry, thermal imaging manufacturers, and taught at conferences all over the world. He also developed the world's first firefighting thermology curriculum, credentialed by Western Kentucky University and peer-reviewed by the Kentucky Thermal Institute. Now, given that introduction, you might be expecting that we are going to speak all about thermal imaging. Well, you'd be right. We are going to go down the rabbit hole of thermography, the origins of the technology, the good, the bad, the ugly, some top tips. We've got references under here for Andy's YouTube page. There's links to his company Insight Training LLC and some really good videos on their YouTube around tactical thermology, thermal paradigm shift, the power of heat, how heat affects the victim, how to use a thermal imaging camera most appropriately, how to follow flow paths. We talk a lot about NFPA 1801, and we talk about different types. Now, there's some bits on the episode today where you think you might benefit from some visuals. This is available on our YouTube page where we compile a bunch of clips of Andy speaking about the Bullard, the Fleur, the MSA, bunch of different brands, some of which he holds up and talks a little bit about in this episode. But one of the biggest and most beautiful surprises of this conversation is around 2/3 of the way through, we take a hard left and we go into an area around a lot of self-awareness. We talk about leadership, we talk about rules versus principles, we talk about values, and he shares some very personal elements of personal and professional challenges he's faced in his life, how that changed the framing and the context, and basically his whole blueprint about how he goes about his life, how he manages and leads other people. Also, I want to give some time context on this. So this episode was actually recorded in December 23. That might help when you listen to a few things and we reference things that are time frame related, such as the discussion around the quake technology, the edge detection technology. He references that being unveiled at FDIC. That will have already happened now. But so much of this content is evergreen, and to be honest, a lot of it is just not readily available or even known, certainly not taught in a lot of places. And I can say that from a UK fire service perspective. Sure, there'll be some people telling me, no, we do, Pete. Well, you're one of the very few, and I salute you for that. A lot of this I didn't know. I wasn't taught this in my initial training many years ago. A lot of it I learned through Euro Firefighter II, which is where I first read of Andy. So I just want to put that time frame in there. One of the accidental burdens of the podcast as it's become now is that we record with a lot of guests, and as you'll know, we only release one episode a week. So some of this stuff just gets rolled over, and then we try and release things that are time relevant. And we end up, honestly, like time of speaking now, we've got 23 episodes recorded, and some of them are a few months old. We're trying to, get them all in a line and all that sort of stuff. And Andy is one example of many guests who are just very understanding, and we really do appreciate that. We want to bring all this content to you, but we are limited by the size and efficiency of the podcast and its team. So with all that said and done, there really is two angles to look at this episode from. There's the technical, the procedural, the equipment and technology based conversation. And then we roll into some really useful leadership and personal perspective, kind of life lessons. Andy shares something really good towards the end around the affair you didn't see coming. And that's not an insight or suggestion into Andy's life. It's just a really good analogy that he gives about how you need to temper your passion for the job. The fire service can be somewhat of a black hole. It will just keep taking from you. You can't complete firefighting. You'll never know it all, you'll never attend all the jobs, all the seminars, all the events, all the conferences. It will just continue to take from you if you let it. And don't forget, you're more than just the thing you do. Fire service was here long before us, and it will be here long after. You are just a custodian here to do the best you can with the time you've got. So with all that said and done, I hope you're excited for it, because it really was a blessing of a conversation, and I really wish we could have got out earlier. So it's here now, and I know you're going to love it. Again, one final thing, be sure to drop into the notes. There's a link in there to Insight Training LLC, that's Andy's company. Go to the YouTube page, you'll see some really great instructionals, some great videos, and there's a link in there to Andy's LinkedIn as well if you want to contact him. And there'll be a link in there to our Patreon as well, where you can access a bunch of books, documents, and presentations to learn a whole load more about what Andy is discussing on this episode. So I'll not take up any more of your time, and without further ado, it's an absolute pleasure to introduce Andy Starnes. I'll see you on the other side.
Warriors fight in war type environment, right? Soldiers trained to fight. We are fighting in a war type environment, and we are the only industry that is saying no, less of that, less of that. Then we perform badly, we get mad. So here's my solution. We should take a page out of some of those decon procedures, and Ottawa Fire and a bunch of other ones have done this. They created a way to do live fire training. But when they come out, they're like a hazmat scenario. They decon them, they treat them right, okay? But that costs money. That's the real reason it's not being done. It has nothing to do with cancer, it has everything to do with money. And the other thing is live fire training is costly. And when you look at the restrictions behind it, that's why they don't do it. And where we fail because of that is one of my issues when you asked about that list is we fill a building full of cold smoke or artificial smoke and you give them this. How do they simulate a victim, Pete? They'll use a heated mannequin or a live person who's breathing said safe artificial smoke, which by the way, if it has glycol in it, it'll cause respiratory failure. So yeah, that's a good idea. Let's make them, they're vaping. That's a good idea. So they're in there, and the recruit or firefighter with no experience on rescuing a victim scans with this device and sees Pete white hot on the floor. And the last thing he remembered in training was the victim's going to be white hot. That is not the case. A victim will present one of three ways, or based on three variables: the background temperature of the environment, the body temperature of the person, if they're alive or dead, covered up, and then what kind of camera they're holding and what application mode or temperature mode it's in. In this particular device, if I stay in high sensitivity with this camera, I'll see you beautiful. You'll be clear all day long. But if it goes to low sensitivity, the lower, cooler environments, you'll disappear on. It'll focus in on the heat. And if they've never seen that, how successful are they going to be with this device? They don't know the two operational modes of this camera. Basically, it has a high and low sensitivity, and the majority of cameras on the market do. So if you don't train them for success and then they fail, whose fault is it? It's the host organization, because they gave you a device with no training. And NFPA 1408, I know y'all don't fall into NFPA, but it says you shall provide thermal imaging training to all affected members prior to it being placed in service. Classroom, hands-on, live fire, a minimum of annually. Okay? And most don't even know that standard exists. But you know who does? Lawyers. And they're quoting it. We are a litigation-rich environment. So to circle back to what you were saying, it comes down to a training education issue, but that white we're talking about, they don't carry it, they don't turn it on in time, they don't scan properly, they don't wipe the lens, and then they train improperly, right? I read a policy from the department in Florida that is encouraging them on their large area search to stare at the camera while they do their large area search. And if the camera fails, that company officer is to wait till another camera comes to him. What in God's green earth did they just do? What are the odds of an electrical device failing in a high heat environment, especially the way we care for them? Have you seen how firefighters care for these expensive devices? Learn so much about people. Fires are easy. People are not. Fires are predictable. If the fire service would actually had like a physicist and a forensic analysis of everything they do, they'd say, you're idiots. Here's the building. Here's how it burns. Here's how it's going to go. Why you fight it that way? We deny physics, right? But we also deny psychiatry and the way people work. So when I became a captain, I learned really quick. I was 30 years old as a captain, and I'm supervising 50-year-old people. How well do you think that went, right? So I had a lot of learning opportunities. Let's just say my dad called it tuition. You pay for it, you fail. You pay for it, you fail, you learn again. But I did 4 years as a relief captain, Then I got assigned to a slow ladder company on the north end of town. I did 18 months there when my daughter was born. My wife said that's where I was supposed to be. I said, Lord, send me anywhere but ladder 31. Guess where I went? Ladder 31 for 18 months. My daughter was, you know, newborn, and they didn't run a lot at night, which was a blessing in that respect. But what I learned was people were there because of disciplinary reasons, and I learned about stuff I didn't realize. It was 18 months of misbehavior issues. First 6 months, I was extremely optimistic. It was like the honeymoon phase. Everybody liked me. I was the new guy. I didn't do my homework. So I come in there, knew nothing about the people there. I got a rookie, and I've got a bunch of senior people. And if you did the math and did a little, like, you know, you size up buildings, right? When you go to a fire, I didn't size up the station, I didn't size up the people. And there was an engine and a ladder in that station. And the engine had the same captain for 8 years. The ladder had 8 captains in 8 years. Red flag, okay? Why is the captain leaving every 12 months? Because these good old boys, guys who were their friends, who were good people, were taking advantage of their officer. And they wanted to do what they wanted to do when they wanted to do it. And those company officers knew if they stayed there, they would have to hold them accountable. And they didn't want to do that. They didn't want to lose their friendship. They didn't want to be the boss. My line is, don't make me be your boss. I'll do everything for you. Don't lie to me. I'll help you. I'll support you. But if you lie to me and you go outside the system, you're going to make me be the boss. If you make me choose between my family and you, you're going to lose. Remember this, though, about managers and leaders. Number one, managers enforce rules and leaders enforce values. So don't get hung up on policy and procedure. The other one is this one. And I love this because I worked with a guy who was all about relationships and not about policy. And when we were at the station together, they said, I see how this works. One of you keeps you laughing, the other one keeps you employed. One of you knows every policy, one of them can't find his policy book. And that was the way it was. It's like he knew if he got in trouble, he'd go, hey, Andy, what's the SOG for this? And I'm like, it's 208.01A. He's like, how do you know that? It's like, you don't want to know. I spent 18 months learning it. That's how I know it. I know it because it hurt. But if you want to summarize all of our issues when it comes down to managers and leaders, there are too many people that focus on program and policy level, but they never start with the person. If you start with the person, and in the background, you know the policy is like the principles of the organization. If we stay principle-based, we never have to get into those rules. But in the background, I know those rules are there. We don't want to go there. But I know, like you said, I know where to look. I may not know them by heart. But if I know that person's heart, then I'm more likely to be more successful. It's relationship-based. This is why I don't agree with a lot of this buddy boss stuff. You can't be their buddy. You can't be their boss. If in our job, in the level of stress and the level of intensity and commitment and intimacy we spend with each other, if you are not connected on an emotional, personal level with someone that you could lay your life down for, you cannot be corporate level CEO policy based in our business. You cannot. If you will, you are cold, calloused, and you do not care about them. You cannot, our job is to keep that seat warm for the next one and help that young person become that old firefighter. And I think part of this is we're the most functional, dysfunctional group in history. Because if you look at what we do for a living, who would sign up to do what we do, number one? Who would do that and willing to go, yeah, I'll go do that. And number two, the fact that you want to be in that environment says that you have a need to serve. You have a need to be around people. That whether you believe like I do or not, you care about people, right? Or you wouldn't be there. A lot of guys get in it because of the rush, the adrenaline, but in the end, they want to save that little kid. When they're doing CPR on an infant, they don't want that infant to die. When they drag a kid out of the bottom of the pool, or you pull somebody out of a burning building, or you deliver a baby, you want to have that moment where you can look back and say, I didn't save everybody, but I had some moments where I know that kid now is a grown up, or that mom got to go to her kid's ball game, or that dad, he got to get out of the hospital, and because of the efforts that you made, right? You were placed there for a reason. And I think people look at that too insignificantly. They look at this as a job. I'm like, dude, you understand that you're the difference between that person going forward in life? And if you can't do your job well, and in those seconds or minutes that you have to react and do what you're supposed to do, if we don't do that right, that person's life is over. It goes back a long ways, but I've seen it in the 1960s and 1970s. There were large mechanisms placed on aerial trucks and fire trucks that were the size of like spotlights that were used for searching for people. But then you saw the first handhelds in the late 90s, early 90s, depending on where you were in life, depending on who was releasing it. You had the Carnes Iris, you had numerous other ones that came out. These things were massive, they were very large, they were BST detectors or Vidicon technology, Vidicon tube technology, which was, by the way, all this stuff comes from the military. We wouldn't have any of this if basically anytime something's declassified from the military, you usually see it for civilian use 3-4 years later. So what you and I are currently seeing, way out of date, most of it. And fire service wise, by the way, we have never hit the word innovative in the fire service world as far as thermal imaging, because if you look at what our friends in the industrial world do, we don't even scratch the surface peak of what's possible. Does this look innovative to you? Okay, so this is about 1999. It's a K90 Talisman from ISG. This was on a fire truck 2 years ago. I collect these. I collect all kinds. So when you asked what's holding us back, number one, ourselves, because we refuse to adapt. We refuse to do technological changes because fire, as Alan Bruncini, God rest his soul, quote, firefighters hate two things: change and the way things are, right? I mean, you can go back and read all about when we first introduced the first combustion engine fire truck, and guys with the horse-drawn carriages were saying, no, we want to keep the horses, right? So we've always been obstinate when it comes to change because we like our comfort level, and that's kind of a complacency issue. But the real reason why we're not seeing this is this right here. Because if you look at the market, the global thermal imaging market is pushing $8-9 billion. Okay, if you look at the fire service market, it's not even close to $100 million globally. Globally, every firefighter in the world. So if you spread out all the fire service thermal imaging manufacturers, even the ones in China, the main players here in US and UK, they're making $10-15 million a year in sales on these things. That's sales. That's not what they're making. And you go, okay, let's look at one of these big companies that is an $8 billion company, and what's $15 million to them? Nothing, right? So what you need to see is what really drives innovation. Is it the fact that it needs to be done, or they have found a cure for cancer? No, what drives innovation is capitalism and money. So what you're describing in the see-through technology from Quake is a helmet-mounted, basically where they've been pushing for IMD, in-mass display, or mass-mounted TIC. Currently you see Scott Sight, MSA, iTIC, and Draeger are the ones that have ones out there. Rosenbauer had one that looked like a bug antenna, but it wasn't very I just wore the new Draeger one in Germany not too long ago. But then you have devices like this. This is an MSA Lunar, which has something similar that see-through has, and it's called edge detection technology. And edge detection technology is not infrared. So what you're seeing is manufacturers are deciding to say it's not just infrared, but what you're not hearing is they can take the same cheap detector feed and they can dress it up with a lot of software and make it do things they've never done before and still sell it to you at a higher price point. And it is innovative, but in the end, it's still the same archaic, small. Let's look at it this way. If you remember your first car and the first engine it had, now take that same engine and now add a twin turbo and all the electronics. That's really the same engine, but now it's got a lot more design and enhancement. So now what we've got is we're going to take infrared and we're going to add software. So now I've got tracking, I've got edge detection, and on the surface that looks great. But my problem is what most of these manufacturers are not looking at is the end user, the context of their environment, their overall staffing. And can you operate this with a gloved hand? Can you push multiple buttons when your heart rate's over 170 and your core temperature is elevated? Are you going to be able to make rational decisions with difficult technology that's not clear to the basic end user who's had less than 1 hour of thermal imaging training on average, if any, right? First thing I'd recommend you do is go to my YouTube channel and watch our free webinar, Thermal Imaging Tips for Success. What I did is I took the top 10 reasons firefighters fail and I made it into a training webinar. and I turned it into let's fix it. Because in 13 years of doing this, even myself, the mistakes I've made, my pathways made, we've learned these things. We figured out, if you do these things incorrectly, it doesn't mean that a device you're holding, you will fail. Believe it or not, the first thing is, you got to convince them to carry it. 50% of the time, it doesn't come off the truck in the US. 50% of the time, it stays on the truck. If you hear them say, oh, we only use that for search and overhaul, they're not using it. 38% of all line of duty deaths I've surveyed, it stayed on the charger of the fire truck when those firefighters died. Now, you just mentioned military. You think to yourself, would a special forces operative, whether he's in the UK or he's in the United States, would he or she go in to attack an enemy blind? No. They use all their fundamental training and all the specialized weaponry to take out the bad guy, but yet we won't use this to help go get the good guy. So that's the first problem, is we won't even carry it. Second is most of them are antiquated, out of date. They don't buy them, they don't update them. And when they do buy them, you see them buy the cheap situational awareness device and give it to the firefighter that's a low resolution, low refresh rate, poor image quality, and the firefighter gets frustrated because it doesn't work well as they should, right? And then when they finally get it, guess what else they don't know? I learned this the hard way. You go to a fire and you wait to turn this on till you're at the front door of the fire. It takes 30 seconds for any fire service tech to turn on and be ready. They may turn on in 5 seconds, 17 seconds, 7 seconds. That doesn't mean it's ready. Remember in the morning when you wake up after a hard night, the alarm clock goes off? It went off. Are you awake? Are you ready for battle? Because I'm not. I mean, I gotta have 5 cups of coffee and, wake up a little bit. So, okay, yeah, all right, so we're on the same page. This device goes through a series of things called flat field corrections. You'll hear it clicking, you'll see the screen freeze. That's normal. It's actually firing and calibrating the image. So if you turn it on and go running towards the fire right within a few seconds, you're gonna be really upset. All you're gonna see on this at 17.5 seconds is the logo of the company as it turns on from a hard turn on. So yeah, I got some of them that'll turn on in 5 seconds, but they're not ready either. So it's got to warm up. So turn it on before you get off the fire truck, right? While you're on the way. And then the other thing that you will find that is just probably the biggest thing out there is 2 big issues. One, they go into a fire standing up. And as soon as you step into a fire, because we watch the University of YouTube, we see this all the time. What happens as soon as you step into a burning building within the first meter or 2? I reviewed 8 near misses, maydays with firefighters injured this year alone, where they failed to do this, to wipe the front of the lens. And they stated in their report, the camera whited out or grayed out. New cameras do not white out or gray out due to heat. If the front of this device gets moisture on that lens, it's like basically you going down the road in your car in a blinding rainstorm with the windshield wipers off, and you just wiping the inside of the windshield. It doesn't work that way. Because I've seen firefighters intentionally wiping the screen, like this, and going, this thing is garbage. No, it's not. All you got to do is go, whoop, and it clears right up and get down, right? So, I mean, I'm serious. 8 incidents this year across the U.S. that I know of. And imagine how many there actually occur where they're blaming this device when they don't even know that if they don't wipe this lens and it fogs up, it cannot see through moisture. Kryptonite. If you're walking with this in front of your face, you're going to have a lot of problems because one, field of view diminishes greatly from 170 degrees horizontally down to as low as 32 degrees depending on the camera you're using, which is like looking through a toilet paper tube. So you're going to miss victims, miss holes in floors, all kind of stuff. If I put this in front of my face and I come up on a set of stairs, I'm going to go down the stairs and end up in the hospital because most of these have depth perception issues of 1 meter. So anything within the first meter, you're going to be like like when you get a new pair of glasses, you're trying to grab something that's not really there. Don't do that, okay? So what we teach is we look with our training and our techniques before technology. Our initial look inside of a smoke-filled environment, outside the door. You open the door, read the smoke, get low, look at it, read it, look which way it's going, read the air track, the flow path, look for that, neutral plane, look for the things you should do, call for live fire and layout. Then pick up the camera, right? If your firefighter is fortunate enough, who's already there with the nozzle, who has one of these handy dandy newer ones that my company helped design, this outperforms many decision-making cameras and fits on that firefighter's neck right there. And the company officer comes run up behind him, let's go. And he goes, we got to get upstairs. And the nozzleman goes, stairs are right to the left, right here. He goes, how'd you know that? They bought me this cool little device here, and I just looked, it's right there. You know, so if the nozzleman has that, that's great, because this is 325 grams. That's not weighing him down. This, on the other hand, is more durable. The company officer can, if the nozzleman doesn't have it, he or she does their scan, and our scans are conducted this way. If I think the fire's to my left, I intentionally start inside the door casing, low and to the right, because behavioral-wise, every human being is the same. If you look towards a threat, you will not look away from it. So we start in the coldest areas, because 12% of all victims per firefighter rescue survey are found with a certain amount of meters from an egress point. And we've seen firefighters pick the camera up high, and grandma's right here, and they miss her. So we start low, and we move towards the fire. And if it's a pistol grip, we invert it, flip it sideways, gangster grip. Like this one's 42 by 57. When I flip it sideways, now I've gained 15 degrees. Now, I'm not a mathematician, Pete, but 15 is more than 12, okay? So, you know, so if you look at that and I go, 15 degrees adds a lot more for me, floor to ceiling. The two areas you want to see are where the victim is and where the fire is, right? In some cameras, you'll get as little as 9 degrees. Some you'll get 12 to 13. Some you'll get 15. Bottom line, you will get more, and you'll do it faster. And you'll see where the victim is. You'll see layout, life, and then fire. I was taught to look for life, layout, and fire, right? Or life, fire, layout. The problem with that is, then I take a TIC class, and the first thing the TIC class told me to do was point the camera at the ceiling. Is anybody crawling across the ceiling in your fires, Pete? Because if they're crawling across the ceiling, I'm not coming to save you. You need Jesus, you need an exorcist, you need Psychic Friends Network, you need somebody beyond what I can do for you. Okay? Because we're talking about priests and some stuff that's outside of my pay grade, okay? Problem is that firefighters, A, don't even know this stuff exists. B, their fire department won't back them or provide any training whatsoever. Because the two areas that I am most passionate about are the two areas that fire departments don't fund or don't focus on. Thermal imaging and behavioral health. Both of those happen in the dark. The darker the fire, the darker your heart. You don't see either one of them coming. And that's what I work in, because I believe those two intertwine, and that's how God points me in the right direction. I can only do two things. That's it. I can't do nothing else. But that's where we're failing, is we're not identifying the actual target. We're charging, like you said, open door, pulse, pulse. My friend calls it pulse, 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 banana. Pulse, 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 banana. We're monkeys, right? He says, that's how I learned the gas tool. Pulse, pulse, stop. Pulse, pulse. Had a little red carpet. You went so many feet or meters and you pulsed. And I can show you whether you're a gas cooling guy or a smoothbore Baptist guy. If you do it by check the box, you both lose. If you don't use critical thinking, like you talked about in the beginning, to say, this is something that's going to backdraft. This is a severe, I'm crawling in a full exhaust. If you don't use critical thinking and experience and training to identify that, it doesn't matter what tool I place in your hand. You realize this is called a smartphone, right? This does not imply that I am a smart user, okay? It does not. Just because this is really amazing, and this has 1 terabyte of storage information, more than any other computer I owned up to that point, doesn't imply that I will be able to use it to its maximum capability, does it? Whether the books you read, the people in your life, the environment, or the dirt you're planted in, if you will. You know, if I got good dirt around me, my tree's going to grow. If I got poison dirt, I'm not going to grow well. So we're a reflection of that. And the good, the bad, the ugly, all of that comes together in fruition to the culmination of who you are. And you need to take all that and use it to help other people. But to summarize, I think that what we need to focus on with our firefighters in general, whether we're teaching them how to use a tool like a TIC, or we're teaching them how to manage people, it is important. Both of these things are talking about the unseen. You can have a guy look at you straight in the face and say, I'm good, I'm fine, and you know for a fact they're lying. And then you can blow it off, and then they blow their head off. So what I would challenge people to do is, fighting fire is easy. The building's there, you know the problems, you know what you got to do, and it may have some days where it don't work out well. But those people that you are tasked to manage, you better put more work into learning how to manage them, not the policies, but how to be a leader, a person that can help them, empower them, and get them through the struggles that they're going through. Like you said, you've got these businesses, you've got all that stuff, you're going through hard times in your marriage. That firefighter could quit or could do something else, and there could be terrible consequences, or you could be the difference of that person getting through that struggle and moving forward in life. Because you know as well as I do, policy and program-wise, the departments don't give them that support. You will give them all the support. That's what matters. And I think that's what people should take away from this, is that don't wait on a program. Don't wait on your department to step up and create a values vision system that you never believed in the first place. How about you be the difference? How about you be the one, because you took the test to watch over these 4 people and lead them into the darkness of a fire. You should be able to lead them out of their dark spots of their life and just be that person. And then go home and be the same guy to your wife and your kids. That's tough, and you won't do it unless you have what we're having right now. And if you don't have what I call board of directors, accountability groups, where you can spill your guts and say, hey, I'm not the only screwed up individual on this planet, right? This is mutually encouraging, right? I hope so, because otherwise you and I owe each other a copay and a doctor bill. But
the Firefighters podcast was created to recognize, acknowledge, inspire, and hopefully even motivate these incredible individuals who have chosen to be part of the first responder community. Our driving purpose is to create a legacy resource for the current and future generations of firefighters and first responders. We get some incredible feedback from listeners and guests, and as the podcast grows, our desire to create longevity and sustainability means we are asking for the support of our listeners. If you want to support the podcast, if you want to get discounts to our merchandise, hoodies, clothing, coins, patches, tallies, and also access to all of the incredible documents that get shared with us from our podcast guests and sector leaders, and please head over to our Patreon page, and for just £3 a month you can support the future of the podcast. Please finally hit that follow, subscribe, or rate button on the platform you're listening, and wherever you are in the world, please support your emergency services responders, and thank you for listening.